Welcome to this recorded presentation entitled, What is a Disability? Presented by the Immigrant and Refugee-Led Capacity Development Network of Illinois project, based out of the University of Illinois at Chicago, Institute on Disability and Human Development, with generous funding and support from the Illinois Office of Welcoming Centers and Illinois Department of Human Services. So to begin with, we want to lay down some very concrete facts regarding rights for immigrants and refugees with disabilities. The US Constitution and all its amendments guarantee basic rights to all people in the United States, regardless of immigration or disability status. Again, the US Constitution and its amendments guarantee basic rights to all people in the United States, regardless of immigration or disability status. And sometimes there's a question of, do immigrants with disabilities have rights? And the answer is yes. Immigrants with disabilities have disability rights regardless of status. And these rights are protected by federal and state legislation and laws, which we'll cover some of those in a few slides. So again, immigrants and refugees with disabilities do have protection and rights under federal and state laws in the US. So this training is to just give you a definition of disability. But before we talk about disability, some things to keep in mind is that definitions of disabilities are varied depending on federal, state jurisdictions, or certain governmental agencies or healthcare systems have their own criteria or definitions of disability. And the key thing about definitions of disability is that in many of these systems, the definition is used to help with eligibility criteria. So as you work with your families and individuals from the immigrant refugee communities that may disclose or you have concerns or believe they may have a disabling condition, and as you talk about accessing services, let them know that if they have a disabling condition under federal or state laws or under the healthcare system that they are interfacing with, that they are eligible and have the right to pursue those services. And it's not necessarily against their culture, but it's taking advantage of the US culture and system definitions. Okay. So let's talk about what is a disability. So in your work of providing services for immigrants, refugees, and families, you help them support to connect with employment resources, family supports, learning and education, even leisure time, and of course, immigration and refugee services. And all of those things are intertwined. And disability is just another layer or another circle of interaction, just like family supports. So we want to share that so that to break the myth or the misperception that disability is a separate thing. Just as you worked for language access and employment access and housing access and support your families and individuals through navigating the immigration system, that energy and the way that you support them to understand those systems can apply to connecting with disability resources. And we'll share some of those resources at the end of this presentation. Okay, so what is a disability? As I mentioned, there are many definitions, and as you go through, as you interface and support your families and individuals interfacing with different systems, you can learn about those. But the benchmark legislation that is a good reference point is the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. And the ADA defines disability in three major criteria. A person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. And major life activities are things like being able to go to work, being able to have relationships and eat and take care of one's home and daily living activities, learn, all those activities that we use to go through our daily lives. If there's a physical or mental impairment that significantly impairs that, then that person can be considered having a disability. Secondly, if the person has a record of such an impairment. So if they go see a doctor, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist, or an accredited professional, and after they see that person and that professional says, based on my examination or screening, I can say that you will qualify as a person with a disability and fall under protections of the ADA. And third, is a person is regarded as having such an impairment through normal observation. So if you observe someone walking on the street and they have a limp, a person can reasonably assume that because they're limping, they may have a disability, and therefore they have the protection of the ADA. It's that kind of just reasonable observation. And that's, generally speaking, the general framework of what the ADA considers having a disability. Now, there are many different categories of disability, and we'll go over some of those. Again, just to give you a broad sense. So first of all, intellectual disabilities. Intellectual disabilities are disabling conditions or disabilities that affects a person's intellectual functioning, their ability to reason and learn information or problem solve. So some examples could be learning disabilities, all the different arrays of learning disabilities. Someone who is on the autism spectrum disorder. Okay, those are examples of intellectual disabilities. Developmental disabilities. Developmental disability is an umbrella term that encompasses a number of different disabilities. Some of the characteristics are that they're severe, it's a severe chronic disability, and developmental disabilities can combine both cognitive and physical disabilities, one or both. And developmental disabilities most likely are lifelong. So these can be, some examples could be multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, can be considered developmental disabilities. Mental health. Mental health is considered disabilities. Mental health conditions are disabilities that affect a person's ability to regulate their mood or help in terms of emotionally identifying relationship boundaries, appropriate boundaries for friendships, professional relationships, romantic relationships, different types of relationships and boundaries. And again, have influences or impacts a person's ability to moderate their mood and emotions. Okay. And these examples of mental health conditions are chronic depression, anxiety disorders, panic attacks, those types of disabilities. So another category is sensory disabilities. Sensory disabilities are any disability that impacts a person's, any of the 5 major senses. So vision, hearing, taste, smell, or touch. So people who are blind or visually impaired, deaf, hard of hearing, if someone has their ability to smell, touch, or taste is impacted, they can be considered having a disability. Mobility disabilities are disabilities that impact a person's ability to use one or more of their extremities. So limitations in their ability to use their fingers or wrists or hands or arms, legs, feet, their ability to, they don't have the full range of motion, or they don't have the full ability of strength of grip. So like picking something up, their fingers aren't able to fully grasp or grasp it tightly. So those types of conditions can be considered mobility disabilities. Okay, as well as in some cases, mobility disabilities may require someone to use adaptive equipment, be it walkers, canes, wheelchairs, and alike. Physical disabilities are disabilities that primarily impact a person's body. They may require assistive technologies and physical disabilities are things that physically affect a physical body, such as deafness and vision loss, because of maybe if their eyes are damaged, there's an impairment or damage to one's hearing or nerve damage. That's a physical disability or physical injury or physical reason, and considered a physical disability. So people who with physical disabilities may use adaptive equipment like hearing aids, braille, canes, walkers, wheelchairs, and alike. Okay, so again, these are just broad, quick snapshots of the different categories to give you a sense of some of the unique characteristics of each. Don't feel like you have to be an expert in any of these. Again, this is just to give you a snapshot. So let's talk about prevalence. As we summarize what disability is, one of the misconceptions is that disability isn't that common, when in fact it is. According to the 2010 census, among the adults in the US, it was found that 1 in 5 American adults have a disability. So 20% of American adults in 2010 were living with a disability. In relation to the prevalence of mental health, approximately 15% of adults live with a mental illness, according to the World Health Organization from 2017. So if we look at, and the World Health Organization pulled data from international numbers, so 15% of adults who participated in the World Health Organization study were found that it's 15% of adults are living with some form of mental illness. So disability, mental illness, it is fairly common. And it is important to acknowledge that and to support families and individuals so that they can move. If you, as a service provider, integrate disability questions and supports and services and an openness in your organization and in your programs to recognize and support disability in your practice, you will help all immigrants, refugees move toward a happy and meaningful life, which is all that we want to do. Okay. As we close out, one other thing I want to share is highlight 3 resources to start from, 3 key resources that can be very useful resources to you. Those are the Centers for Independent Living, Equip for Equality, and the Great Lakes ADA Center. Centers for Independent Living are analogous to what you as a welcoming center are. They are a one-stop shop to get connected to and learn about resources around all types of disabilities, all disability groups and all areas of service, whether it's education, housing, youth services, senior services, employment, healthcare, whatever the question or the concern might be. Center for Independent Living is a great place to start with those questions. They are well connected to a number of resources that can help individuals connect to resources, and as well as peer supports. And in Illinois, there are 22 centers across the state of Illinois. So there is most likely a Center for Independent Living in your county or in your region. And if you click on this link, you'll get to a directory that you can find the center that's close to you. Equip for Equality is the statewide protection and advocacy agency. They have attorneys and advocates and experts on staff in disability justice law, litigation, and representation. So if you are working with a family or individual who has a disability and they're facing discrimination or some kind of civil rights challenges, or have legal questions regarding their rights around disability, Equip for Equality is a great place to reach out to. They are based in Chicago, but they are statewide. They have representatives and staff throughout the state. Again, analogy, they're kind of like the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant Refugee or the National Immigrant Justice Center organization of the disability world. Again, their staff are just superbly expert in disability rights laws. And lastly, the Great Lakes ADA Center. The Great Lakes ADA Center is our local region expert on accommodations and accessibility. They are a great resource to help you, give you information and insights on how to make your facility and your programs accessible and meet the ADA guidelines, as well as just other tools and other trainings or webinars to help you learn about disability, accessibility, and accommodations. Okay. Just to let you know, along with the recorded webinar, as a handout, there are additional resources to a variety of organizations and groups specific to different disability organizations that you're welcome to investigate on your own. One resource I do want to highlight is the Illinois ASL or American Sign Language Interpreter Referral Directory. This is a website where you can go on and connect with ASL interpreters who are certified, and you can search by region, by subject area, or by licensure. There are different types of ASL certifications from beginner to moderate to master. And again, it gives you a chance to connect with an ASL interpreter or an organization. All right, so thank you very much. If you have any other questions, you can contact Jae-Jin Pak, who is the Community Education and Training Coordinator at the University of Illinois at Chicago's Institute on Disability and Human Development, at his email, jjpak@uic.edu. Thank you so much.